single photograph shattered 40 years of my life in an instant. When I recall that moment, I remember my hands trembling so badly, I nearly dropped the envelope of condolence money I was clutching. My husband's funeral hadn't even faded from the house when a woman arrived at my door, clutching a small child to her chest. She looked me straight in the eye, and in that gaze I saw a claim I never imagined would enter my home. She said my late husband was her father. Before that day, I would have told you my life was ordinary, even tidy. At 62, with grey edging my hair, I had cooked countless meals for my family, always for many, rarely just for myself. My eldest son, Young-soo, had returned home after a bitter divorce, bringing his troubled son, Jun-ho. My days revolved around my grandson's schedule, preparing his breakfast, helping with homework, wiping tears when he missed the after-school bus. My husband, Kang-sok, wasn't a man of many words, and when he passed, the world thought he left quietly, taken by illness earlier than anyone expected. His life, I sometimes thought, was patchwork, stitched together in places, but none of the past peeking through. That changed 3 days after the funeral. The woman, she called herself Sun-young, presented me with one thin proof. An old photograph. The yellowed corners, the grain of cheap film, my husband cradling a newborn I'd never seen, a faded signboard in the background, written in old-style Korean script. On the back, a date from some humid summer years ago, and a woman's name I'd never heard, written in pencil. Sun-young claimed she was the baby, raised under another name until she finally found her real father. It barely processed her words, each one heavy, like swallowing stones that would not go down. That night, pieces of long-buried memories rose up, disturbing the quiet routine I'd clung to for decades. Suddenly my house smelled not of rice, but of unfinished stories. The neighbors' eyes followed my every step. I could feel their curiosity dart towards Sun-young every time they dropped by, pretending to bring soup, but really sniffing out the scandal. Even my church community offered prayers and pious advice, none of it comforting. It was as if my front door was now sealed not with locks, but with whispers. Each time I moved a stack of dishes from the cupboard, I thought I might drop one, and when I finally did, the sharp shatter seemed to echo inside my chest. My wedding ring was still tight on my finger, but the history I thought as I'd built with my husband slipped right through my hands. People say they want the truth. What they really want is a spectacle. I left my curtains awkwardly half-closed, uncertain if I should block the world out or invite it in. All the while, low voices snaked through that little gap, carrying fresh gossip. My husband had roamed the country as a sales agent for much of his life, always on the road. I'd heard the warnings, the temptations and secret troubles waiting in cheap motels, the weight of missed calls and late nights. I remembered odd scents on his clothes, like sharp detergent from the sort used in bathhouses, not the clean soap from home. Some nights, I let my own suspicions churn through me, only to smooth them away at sunrise, returning to my role as the steady, enduring wife. I learned long ago that surviving meant letting some doubts lie under the surface. I never fully believed in erasing the past, but I tried my best. From that day, true conflict roared into my home. My son Young-soo lashed out, unable to contain his anger, and stormed out. My daughter, Mi-jung, wept on the phone, terrified what her in-laws would think. I spent countless nights slipping my shoes on and off at the threshold, torn between running outside and hiding inside forever. Sun Young sat for hours at the bus stop near our house, her toddler on her back, their shadows visible from my kitchen window. She looked as fragile as a banner flapping in the wind, every movement threatening collapse. The sound of her child's cry echoed with the same rhythm as the family dog's breathing, both sharp reminders of the unsettled hush in my home. I watched from behind the curtain. Inside me, old anger battled with unexpected sympathy. My maternal instincts warred with my obligation as a grandmother, a mother, the unwritten head of a once steady household. I feared what waves this turmoil might send into my grandson Yunho's future. Worse, even the school was not immune to the rumors. Junho came home agitated after overhearing a whisper from another mother in the playground. I sat by him as he opened his homework, repeating to myself, handwriting must be neat, mistakes erased. Yet my whoopies shook, and I thought of my own mother, who set the table in silence when our family's life was similarly battered by secrets. Her hands, giving more rice instead of words, came back to me like a warm memory as I sat there, at a loss for the right thing to say. At some point, I could no longer sleep. The photograph haunted me. I left the house early one morning to track down the place in the background, once a laundromat and bathhouse, now replaced by a convenience store and cafe. Standing in the damp evening air, I tried to breathe in any lingering trace of the past. I found the old bathhouse owner's son, now managing the cafe, and shared my story with him. His memory was dim, but he rattled off names from those years. One name stuck out from the old fog, Mansu, a close friend of my husband's, whose shadow I now realized was never far from the photo either. A new anxiety crept over me, like moving through a dark street, with invisible footsteps following behind. Yet everyone I passed seemed to know my secret. My hands shook as I rifled through my late husband's belongings. Hidden beneath socks and belts in his dresser, I discovered a small steel box. I opened it with the edge of a thin knife, my breath catching. Inside lay old receipts, an outdated bank book, and a quietly sealed envelope. The contents stopped me cold. The same photograph, and on the back, a message not in my husband's hurried script, but in careful, precise handwriting. A promise to never leave a child alone, a confession of guilt, an apology. It was not Kang Seok's handwriting, it was Manzo's. That moment, rising like a cold wave, brought the truth close. I realized the story everyone was telling wasn't my husband's at all. I saw the possibility that every accusation, every whisper, might be pointed at the wrong man. A family was being torn apart for a secret that did not belong to us. The choices ahead felt like knives. Saving one meant wounding another. I spent the night writing the word family over and over, breaking a pen in the process, my anxiety spilling out through the ink. I went to Mansu, now frail with age and illness, in a nearby care facility. I introduced myself and handed him the photograph. With a trembling hand, he took it. His eyes stretched wide, then drooped under the weight of memory. Even with no words, his expression told me everything. He confessed in broken syllables that my husband had taken on Mansu's wrongs, sending money, comforting Sun Young as a baby, even being photographed as her supposed father. Mansu had run from his responsibilities, cowardice branded onto the back of his hand. My husband, left standing in the line of fire, bore the judgment of others for his friend's sake. So there it was, the twist I never expected. devastating truth at the eye of the storm wasn't an affair by my husband. It was his act of compassion, covering for a friend who could not face his own child. The photograph I was handed, which my whole neighborhood called proof, had been both shield and shackle. My husband was not a perfect man, but he was braver or lonelier or more loyal than anyone realized. I cried then. For all the years I misread the strange scents on his shirts, for the silent sacrifices in the dark, for the heavy kindness that went unthanked. But knowing the truth did not erase the aftermath. Sun Young's hope evaporated before me. Her life's search revealed as a misdirection. I gathered everyone, Sun Young, my children, my grandchildren, in our small living room and laid out the evidence. The bank book, the notes, the patient regularity of support that spoke not of parenthood, but of responsibility and regret. Sun Young stared, her face drained of meaning. She wept for hours, exhausted by the weight of mistaken hope. Eventually I saw her less as a bearer of blame and more as someone orphaned twice. Once by a lost mother, again by a truth she never wanted. Daily routines eventually crept back into shape, but in different colors. Junho and Sun Young's daughter eyed each other like classmates, not rivals. I watched as small acts of kindness replaced the awkward silence. A shoelace tied, a napkin handed across the table. I told my own children what I intended. I would not allow this storm to leave another child isolated, even if it meant carrying Sun Young and her little one alongside my own grandson. When her daughter was unwell or Sun Young was overwhelmed by the world's judgment, I opened my door. My cupboards, my old skills as a caregiver, even my meager pension, all were offered again, this time with a new awareness. Still, some nights I wrestled with the shifting lines. Who was victim? Who was at fault? Life never gave me neat answers. But I knew from experience that choosing silence and turning away from suffering rarely protected anyone for long. I could not change what had happened or erase the noise in the neighborhood, but I could decide how to treat those left in the rubble. Over time, Sun Young's silence became a kind of truce. When trouble found her again, her child's fever spiking, a missed doctor's appointment, I remembered all the ways my husband must have once stepped in for a friend's failing and felt old gratitude for small deeds done in the dark. I realized then that our true measures as family are not always given to us clearly or cleanly. Sometimes the most compassionate thing is simply to keep the table set for whoever needs to come in from the cold. Looking back now, I still hear the neighbors say that one photo nearly destroyed our family. They're not wrong. But I also think about how that same photo revealed hidden courage, cowardice, and the stubborn shape of forgiveness. My husband's memory is neither untarnished nor ruined, merely human, as we all are. In the end, laundry, like the past, is never bleached completely clean. It is dyed by the choices we make. I choose to pass along as much warmth as I have, lending even the misunderstood a plate at my table. If you had been standing in my place, what would you have chosen to protect? And what, finally, would you have been willing to let go?